all going to be familiar with who's going to be leading us in our next topic on Microsoft event production. It's our resident experts here, Donais, and of course, Nick Stillings. Nick, are you with us?
I am.
Oh, yeah.
How's it going?
He is.
All right. Well, fantastic. I'm going to spotlight you both and turn it over.
Right.
So thanks again, Britt. And yeah, we'll continue on our journey of our next topic.
Perfect.
All right. Yeah, Don and I did not spend any time over the weekend like we planned of carefully rehearsing our handoffs and jokes. So we're not unprepared, we're spontaneous and organic. But that's actually kind of nice. Yeah. This is a pretty broad topic. So one of the things I really struggled with is like to put together a one-pager on events in Microsoft Teams. And the reason it's kind of broad is there's a whole bunch of very small features that can be enabled for kind of specific things that just sort of add polish to stuff. Like we're seeing Michelle do that. She's like spotlighting us and kind of controlling content and things like that. Then there's also some kind of odd considerations. Maybe that's, I want to say odd considerations. I saw earlier Sherry made the comment about the classic and new Outlook. I'm like, so we're in the tree of trust here of sort of candor on where Microsoft's at. And so one of the things we're doing is we have these Teams premium license offerings. So within the Microsoft Teams stack and in the meeting stack, there's some features that get enabled if you have a premium license. And most of those are ones that only the meeting or event organizer needs. So we'll kind of call that out. But what we found is it made it really hard to make like a really concise one-page summary slide because there tends to be a lot of decision points. So we're going to take you through some of these. We've got a lot of follow-up examples as we go. So I'm going to drop in a couple of links once we start into chat to take a look at. And then I've got some demos set up. We'll kind of hop out and jump to those. And then I cautioned Don, I've kind of veered away from endpoints. So anything I say about Teams phone or meeting room or devices is wrong. So Don, please correct me. You won't hurt my feelings.
Oh yeah, don't worry about it. I'll keep you on.
Let's see. Thanks. Do you want to introduce yourself and I'll bring up our deck?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I hope most of you guys know who I am. I'm the vice president of the user group, but I'm also work at Microsoft. I'm a converged communications CSA. And specifically, I focus on Teams phone, but I do everything around meetings, events, because I do a lot of that conversation as well. But I also talk about Teams rooms and Android devices, specifically wrapped around Teams and how they interact with them. So constantly talking all the time with that. And you know what? I'm going to take us off Spotlight because it's side by side here. So give me a second.
Yeah, both of us have a face for podcasts, despite being Teams and video guys. Yeah.
And actually, I'll start. You're sharing the presenter side.
I saw that. Actually, let's start with the worst practice. We'll come back a little bit and talk about presenter tips. So I'm sitting in a desk right now. I've got 3 monitors, and you can kind of see what I did is I forgot to go into the slideshow tab in PowerPoint and tell it which of these 3 monitors I want to be as the display, right? And then I accidentally shared the speaker notes into our session. So what sometimes happens is people panic, like, oh my gosh, what's going on? I can't find it. There's a nice little kind of hidden tip that we've had for many, many years in PowerPoint. If you go here where it says display settings and click that little drop down, there's a little button that says swap the presenter and slideshow view. So let me just do that really quick. And bam, I just kind of toggled that. And I didn't have to veer off into figuring out, what my monitor settings are and the fact that PowerPoint doesn't name the monitor the same as Windows does and all that kind of stuff. So, all right, there's tip number 1. Don, let's see how many additional mistakes we can make, and we will just fill things up. So,
what not to do during a presentation about events.
Yes. Yeah, actually, that'll actually be just sort of general best practice.
Yeah, I think so.
Things Definitely. Not to do. So I'm gonna, in a second, I'll grab, or Don, you can, if I get going to screen share, we'll grab this. Okay, yeah, we grab that, just drop it into chat, and I kind of call through what a couple of these things are. So I'm going to take us out in a second. We have a really nice landing page that actually goes through all of this. However, it's pretty long. And so I would say if you've got like an event community, if you've got a collection of like speakers, I'll show you a quick screenshot of ours. We have a team in Microsoft Teams where we have our virtual event community lives, and we have some Ask Us Anything hours that we do, office hours every month. And what that means is there's probably about 3,000 people at Microsoft that are some type of professional speaker. And so we've got just a big community of all of us. We have an even broader one inside of Vive Engage for all the employees. And it's to kind of share a lot of these kind of little best practices that kind of tend to come up. What we found is, because everyone is unique, there's so many little edge use cases, it was really hard for our IT department to build like a definitive training session and keep up with it. And we found that kind of peer support really helps. We'll have kind of things where I'm the only person who's ever needed to like present in this language to this group from this place. It's really hard for IT to anticipate that, but they could drop it into the community and we'll go out and share it. So we'll step through that and I'll kind of show you what that looks like. One of the things that's hanging up here is we have two playbooks. So these are essentially just a series of web pages that go through how to do this event production. And there's kind of three mechanisms we see doing this with. One is just a regular Teams meeting where we've gone into meeting options and we've just applied some settings and added a little bit more structure. For 90% of the meetings that we go to, we don't have to do that, right? We're all peers, we're all presenters. It's a small team, right? It's the Friday stand-up call, and we've got social constructs to enforce things. So if Don forgets to go on mute and starts eating Doritos, I can come off mute and say, "Dude, we hear you crunching," right? Which I can do that with up to like 12 people or 20 people. I don't want to do that in a company town hall, right? I might want to have a little bit more control by like being able to remotely mute Don. Then the other thing that we've got is this custom production playbook, and we're just going to touch on this today. Everything that I do inside of Microsoft Teams, I'm using just the built-in stuff on my device, my phone or tablet or computer. So my microphone, my webcam, maybe I've got a second device. I'm using a headset myself right now, but generally I'm just kind of using the Microsoft Teams client and the things that are inside of it. But you may have a studio environment, something where I've got like cameras and lighting and sound, people in black shirts with their trunk of their cars full of HDMI cables and gaffer's tape. Like, they'll have a professional production environment of some type, and they're not going to want to use Microsoft Teams to do things like bring things on the screen, right? They're going to say, "Hey, we've got that. We've got an encoder. We have a TriCaster we spent $20,000 on. Let us use that." So this whole third bullet is all about how to get that more advanced AV sort of TV studio grade production gear into a session. We're going to touch on this, but not go into too much detail other than to let you know that this exists. And I would say if this hasn't come up, you can safely not worry about it, right? Because if you're able to get by with just the out-of-the-box team stuff, great. However, if you go to one of these event production people and say, "Hey, Nick and Don just showed me I can embed video in PowerPoint," they will laugh at you because they've got a tool set to do that. They've been doing it for years, right? They went to Dunwoody and have a degree in it, and like they want to, or in any school, and they want to kind of use that. But I want to just kind of call out that Microsoft refers to that as custom production of bringing things from outside Microsoft Teams into one of our events, and also pushing it outside of Teams as well too. So I'll show you a screenshot. There's two ways we can kind of hook these up. One is we can like just use an HDMI capture and bring things in, or we also support RTMP, or real-time media protocol, to push content in and push content out. And Teams also supports NDI, or the network device interface from NewTek. Now, if you don't know what I just said, any of those acronyms, you can safely ignore it. But if those are things that are of interest, we'll cover that a little bit more detail in the chat. Then a couple other more resources. We have a really nice forum online that's inside of the Microsoft Tech community. So it's like Microsoft Answers. So it's about 60% of the questions get answered pretty quick. But it's a nice spot where people are kind of swapping best practices. And then I really like this deck. We update it monthly. It just gives me a quick overview of just what's new this month, just scoped to calling, meeting, and devices. So it's kind of nice if you're in this event production space. It's like, I don't really care about many of the other things that Teams does, like the new chat channel experience. I just care about running the company, all hands, or producing our webinar. I want to know how that goes through. And then finally, we'll kind of everything that we're going to go through, we've got the technical documentation too that we'll kind of reference. Don, I'll put you on the spot. Anything you can add to that from
I would
definitely.
Yeah, I would definitely make sure you look at the what's new CMD and continue to look at that. As you said, monthly it gets updated because that's telling you what's coming down the pipeline, or has that just recently got released. And that's things that you may need right away. But definitely go over that event playbook and the event guidance pieces. We are going to hit a lot of those things in there, but just keep that in your back pocket just so you have access to that. And then as we're going through all this stuff, you should be thinking about your best practices that you need to do as you're doing these types of events in your organization. So kind of keep that in mind as we're talking about this. It's like, oh yeah, we need to think about this. We need to think about that, and keep that jotted down so you're ready to go.
Yeah. The spectrum that we think of this, just kind of recap, one-to-one or sort of regular meetings and calls. I can just use all the Teams capabilities out of the box. Microsoft wants you to do that, so we put help files and little prompts. You launch Teams and it pops up and says, hey, here's what's new, and you click I got it. You can now start using that. And then with sort of what we think of as group meetings or Teams meetings, or what most of us spend probably 80 or 90% of our meetings are just that kind of standard team stand-up. I can also use that pretty much all out of the box, because it's either not structured to the point, or it doesn't have so many people that I have to start thinking about how I'm going to manage it. But then at the far end are events, and we don't have like a really firm, like hard guardrail around when something goes from being a big meeting to an event. I think, Don, I'd be curious if people want to drop your own comments into the chat. For me, it's around 50 to 100 people ish, right? Internal. Yeah, at that point, I'm starting to get enough that people are going to accidentally come off mute. I don't want people to like advance the slides without me controlling it. That's internal. If it's external, it's much smaller, like maybe 10 or 20 people. If it's like a customer facing thing, it's going to be a webinar, and I just I'm doing something where I want to have a lot more control over it. But I get that question like, oh, when does it go from a meeting to a structured meeting? I'm like, well, just whenever you go into options and toggle something. Would you add anything to that? Yeah.
Especially if you want to have a very structured type scenario, right? Then that's going to be probably more town hall and webinar. If you want to have a little bit more control and you're more comfortable with the whole meeting side of things, and you want, it just depends upon your scenario, right? If you want breakout rooms, oh yeah, I have a couple options. I can do that in webinars, but I can do it in meetings too. Maybe I just use a meeting, structure it that way. So that people don't have audio and video, right? So it's going to be dependent upon what your ultimate goal is. Think the end first. What do you want, and then backtrack it.
Yeah, I think too. With that though, we can break it up a little bit. So I mentioned there's this concept of just a large meeting with structure, but we do have two things that have product names or feature names attached to them. One is a webinar. So a Microsoft Teams webinar essentially is a Teams meeting, but we put a little bit more control over it. We go into the meeting options and pre-configure some things like who the presenters can be, and most importantly, how you access the meeting. And so for for this session, we used kind of a version of that for the MN365 user group. We use a registration tool, third party, and then you get sent that join link. Then once you got that link, that's kind of how you get in. In Teams webinars, we use something similar. We have a built-in registration tool that I set up for a webinar, and then people register. They get a confirmation, an email. There's an ICS file or a calendar invite as part of that. They click on that, and they join, and they get in. There's a few more things there as well too, but when I'm talking to this with users, I kind of tell them, a webinar is just essentially Teams meeting with registration and some controls on who to present, right? Without getting too far into the weeds, because I don't want to overwhelm them too much. The other thing has an actual feature name is town halls. So a Teams town hall, this is what we're slowly replacing our old live event, which we slowly replaced Skype broadcast with, if you go back that far. A town hall has my speakers, my presenters, my event team join a Teams meeting. And again, we have some controls on who can join and what it looks like and how we bring it on screen. And then inside the Teams service in the cloud, we encode the meeting stage. So the people that are on screen and what's being shared, we encode that into a media stream, and then we push it out to attendees. And a couple of things happen to that because it's now a media stream instead of the peer-to-peer connection that happens inside of the Teams meeting microservice. We can go to a lot more people. Thousands of people. And so a town hall is meant to be more of like an all hands company wide. You can do these publicly, kind of bigger event. There's a couple of gotchas. Because we're doing that media stream, there's a delay of anywhere from 9 to about 45 seconds from when the presenters do something and all the attendees see it. And if you worked with live events or Skype broadcasts, you remember in the past, you're kind of waiting for that media stream to make its way across the internet, maybe through a content delivery network or proxy server down to the attendees so they can see it. And then the other limitation the town halls has, just to kind of call out, is it's really good at encoding media content like this shared screen right here. It doesn't encode our live content, like PowerPoint Live. And I'll go into a little bit more detail in a second, but I always have to kind of caution my presenters, hey, you can't use PowerPoint Live if you're doing one of these kind of bigger events, because we're going to need to encode your shared screen once we get into the media. Then lastly, just kind of touch on, we're not going to spend too much time on this, we can also do what we think of as broadcast events. So there's an app inside of Microsoft Teams called is it custom streaming? I think it's what we're calling it now, Don. Does that sound right?
I think you're right.
And that allows me to take the content of a meeting and stream it out to somewhere else. And so I go into a tool like YouTube Live or Meta Workspace or Facebook Live or Instagram. In all of those, there's a setting where you get a URL that says, hey, this is how I'm going to ingest content and then display it on the page. So like in YouTube, the way it normally works is you upload your video. Google goes through it and encodes it, then just kind of renders it there on the page. It's inside of a player. But in YouTube Live, instead of using the media file that's stored inside their data center, it instead says, hey, I need, coming off of the internet, I need this stream of content to come in, and I'm just going to render it inside this window on the page. And so with what we call RTMP, or real-time media protocol out, I can go into Teams and say, hey, take this thing that I'm doing and just send it off somewhere else. I don't want to have I'm doing a public event. I work for the government. I don't want to have people having to use Teams to see the county commissioner meeting. Instead, we're going to use Teams for the meeting, but we're going to send that off to YouTube Live. Then we've got much less friction for the general public to come in and watch it. That's kind of what that use case is like. So we're going to spend most of our time in these first two. We'll touch a little bit on this third, and you can definitely hit us up for follow-up. But this gets kind of deep, kind of quick, a little bit beyond scope of what we can hit today. But we're definitely happy to take questions in chat as we go. To that end, Don, I'm noticing you're answering the questions as they come along from Kamana and Heather. Yep. I'm kind of glancing at chat. Anything I missed that we need to address?
No, not at all. But I mean, these are great questions. Please continue to do it, but make sure, just understand. Nick kind of mentioned this, especially on the Teams Premium side. Pretty much most of it, I'm saying almost 95% of the Teams Premium features, the organizer is going to need to have the Teams Premium license for it to unlock it for that particular meeting. So keep that in mind. I'm saying 95% because there are some other things that do require everybody to have it. Things like ECDN, if you're using it, you should have that in the back end. But realistically, for the most part, it is really about the organizer doing it. The link that I threw in there does show a comparison around webinars, town halls, and also it does say when it needs premium, but it doesn't say who. And there is actually another link. I'll go try to find that one. I think that might be something that Nick had before. It talks about who needs the premium license versus not. I think that's out there as well. So I'll find that and drop that in there as well.
Yeah, that made me think of a housekeeping thing. So we're gonna look and see how the sausage is made under the covers. Just bring it to the PowerPoint deck. Here's what Don and I are thinking of doing from a flow perspective. Here for the next hour is we kind of just did a quick of, what do we mean by event production? I'm going to take us out and look at that virtual event playbook. So the Microsoft website where we kind of stage all this as a recommendation. And then we'll come back and we can go through each of these things, the large structured meetings, the town halls, and the webinars kind of one by one. And I've got a kind of a mix of slides and demos to kind of take us through that. Then Don, I don't know if you saw, I did put together just kind of a random slide of us of like our musings and best practices. We can kind of go back and we'll hit that in a little bit. Great. So I think with that, let me jump in. Then let's take a look at this virtual event playbook. And so this is in that link that Don dropped into the meeting chat. Let me grab the slide over and just kind of call out a little notice too. Notice I'm hopping back and forth between PowerPoint and demos quite a bit. So I made the decision as a presenter not to use PowerPoint Live. That's just something I often do because I'm demoing so much. It's, I lose that 10 seconds for live to fire up and fire back. But a lot of times I find it's absolutely a great solution. We'll come back. We'll talk a little bit about like where I want to use that, where I just want to do a screen share. So this virtual event playbook, if I scroll down a little bit, I kind of like it. Originally, we published this as a PowerPoint deck, and it was like 120 slides. It was kind of hard to navigate. So what we did is Teams Engineering and our customer advocacy group, if any of you follow Caruana Gatamu, she kind of runs that group. They put together a really nice flow of going through sort of before, during, and after one of these events. What are the considerations and decision points you should make, and then what should you tell your presenters and your event team to kind of help them get ready? So I'm not going to like read everything off the slide, but I want to kind of hit the high points on this. On the first link where it says overview, one thing I like about this is it steps through some examples of just like what makes a good event. So if you head down the path of, hey, I'm going to have a community, or I'm going to offer like a monthly office hours training to my users on how to do a good event. I really like this as a possible content source. And I find when I've done these training myself, I can actually do 30 minutes right here at the Lunch and Learn. Let me just share out what we're looking at right now and talk about accessibility and color. Here's the company template we recommend you use. What questions do you have? And I find that that's enough to kind of generate some really good conversation within my user community, and also get them to start sharing best practices with each other. Now I'm old. I've been doing sort of IT related enablement for 30 years, right? So I used to be a trainer. I'm still a Microsoft certified trainer. I used to be really obsessed. Like I got to get screenshots of everything, put it in PowerPoint, really curate it, like get it into what I would think of as like the official training class for X. And unfortunately with the cloud, or fortunately, things move so fast that I can't really make a official class where I'm curating the vendor's content just for us and producing a version of it that's going to live unchanged for 6 to 12 months. I find that kind of going out to the help files, doing a screen share, and then talking through them solves a couple of things for me. It prevents me from having to like do a lot and cut and paste and content curation trying to keep up. It also it's letting me lead the user to water right there. I don't want to set their expectation that they've got to come to me for training or see the official company deck on something to know how to do it. Just go out to the help page. We want you to use these things, whether it's from the vendor, whether it's our internal SharePoint site, or whether it's on Viva Amplify or Viva Engage, and kind of step through that. So little Nick tip, try to do as little work as possible. If this bugs you at all, you can hit F11 and make a full screen, and you can't even tell that you're in the browser. But I want to call out a couple things here, just kind of at the top. We include some best practices on inclusivity and just how to be a good presenter. I'm not going to go through these in detail now, but I have found that simplicity kind of really helps as you go through that. And a lot of times, just kind of reassuring the presenters it's going to be okay is one of the best things that I can do as a practitioner. So I try to say, hey, well, you can certainly go through and like practice, and you should. Authenticity matters. It's okay if you make a mistake, right? This isn't the Oscars. Just explain and move on. And the time that you'll get back from that can really be a saver in the overall amount of work that you do. So this before, during, and after. So if we zoom in just a little bit, you can kind of see the first like 3 sections on this page kind of talk through just kind of, here's what you think of, kind of what Don and I have just said here for the last 15 minutes. But then it goes into, okay, this webinar, town hall, and Teams live event. We're not going to spend much time on that today, but what are these things and how do I go through and set them up? So let me scroll down. Don, I'm going to come back to this in a second on that slide.
Oh, yeah.
The common issues. All right. So if you scroll down a little bit. Yeah.
Let's 2 seconds before we do that. Remember the last, I don't know how many times I've mentioned this, probably since last fall, Teams live event is eventually going to go away. It's not gone yet. If you're still using Teams live events, start the process of moving over to Town Hall to be able to still use it for those types of scenarios. It's still available. That team is still working on getting feature parity between Town Hall and live event, but just keep that in mind. You're still going to see documentation about Teams live event because it's still there. So keep that in mind.
Also too, when I'm working with my users, I get like super anal retentive on terms. And the reason I do that is like these aren't copyrighted words that Microsoft owns, like town
Yeah.
hall or right. And of course, Microsoft keeps changing the names of things, or they've had different names over time. So we acquired a company years ago called Placeware, and they had a feature called a live events, what they called their webcast broadcast. Then we incorporated that into Skype broadcast and then into Teams. So I'll have a user ping me and say, hey, we need to do the town live event. And I'm like, what do you mean by that? Okay. And it's because, under the covers, I need to know, are we talking about a webinar? Are we talking about just a big meeting? And it drives, I try to kindly request a precision in terms, just because it usually is going to mean a specific toggle somewhere that needs to be set in an option. And so when you say town hall, now I used to use this term a lot before we had the feature name. Now I use the term all hands. Which sometimes you have got to be a little bit careful because that doesn't translate into every language quite the same way. But yeah, I try to sort of think of like what's the uppercase name of the feature versus lowercase kind of motion or activity, and just make sure I'm kind of clarifying what we mean. The town hall broadcast feature where only some people are presenters and you control what's on screen and it goes to 10,000 people. Is that what you mean? And not no, just the monthly Scrum call, with our director and her 72 direct reports, right? Which we do as a Teams meeting. So one thing too, I just dropped this link in. I really like this checklist that's up here. It's just kind of a nice, things to consider, just to kind of help you kind of keep from forgetting that. So a lot of these things, what I will do when I'm working with a specific group is I'll go through kind of the Microsoft generic resources, pick the ones that I think are going to be applicable, and that's kind of what I'll curate with them. So again, I like monthly office hours in a community to do that, so I don't have to be quite as polished when I push it out, and so people can correct me and coach each other when they get into it.
Yep.
Anything to add?
No, I'll tell you that organizational checklist, I've used that many a times, and I have customers that have taken that and customized it to their specific needs. I know the original one of that was Teams Live event focused, but you can change it to whatever your needs are. So if it's town hall, if it's webinar, whatever that's the case, fill it out to as far how you do and how you set those things up to make sure you have a standard across your organization.
Yeah. So I think with that, why don't I transition to webinars? We'll step through them and then do a demo. How do you think?
Yeah.
How's it feel, Don?
I think that's
okay.
That's a great idea.
I'm asking, is this what we agreed to? I can't remember. All right.
Yeah,
so,
totally.
All right, let me jump out to that. I'm going to skip our presenter best practices, and we'll come back to that. I think that'll give us kind of a nice way to do it. Actually, you know what? No, I'm going to change what I just said. Let's hit the structured meeting options, and then we could call out which ones are part of webinars. How's that feel? Okay, so yeah. I'm going to go through this lightning fast, and then we'll come back and step through slower a little bit some of the webinar pieces. So the first is I kind of remind people, hey, underneath meeting options, that's where all these things sit. So we're going to publish these slides after the user group today, but on each slide, I've got a link out to the specific help article on each one of these. So what I'm hoping you can just take advantage of with this is you don't have to recreate content. So if you do a lunch and learn and you want to, a place to start, feel free to steal our slides and they link right out to the actual help page or support article that walks through how to do it. But this is where, so I'm still just scheduling a regular Teams meeting, but I got enough people that are going to come to it that I got to add a little bit of structure. And so the way this works is when I schedule a meeting in Teams, right, you've got to kind of type in the title and type in whether or not it's a meeting or not in Teams, and then that hydrates in the meeting options up at the top, and then I can click on that and I can get to these settings. So a couple of things that I've got here. The first is how the lobby works, whether everyone can come in, or only the presenters, or if I want to manually admit people. The other is who can be a presenter, so right, whether or not we see the share button. And we can always right click on a person's name in the attendee list and promote them to a presenter. So I don't have to have that perfect as we go. Mic and camera for attendees, I find are a really nice one. After about 50 people or so, I start turning those things off, or I will enable them at the end of the meeting. One thing that Teams lets me do is why I can go into options and pre-configure all these things. Let's look at this current meeting and Don's handsome face. If I go here to more, I'll see meeting options, and then I can make those changes. I can actually bring up the options in real time and work on them. Now there's a catch. you have to be a co-organizer to do this. So when Michelle set up this meeting, she has me as a presenter, but don't change it, Michelle, not as a co-organizer. So I don't see that button right here, but if I did, then I would see meeting options right there, and I can go in and like turn on and off things like, like chat or the Q&A. So just a reminder, the organizer does have the ability to do that live during the session. A common thing that I've done is I've seen people say, hey, we're going to just have the meeting go. Don's going to talk for 45 minutes. And then at the end, I'm going to go in and turn on chat. And then you can ask him questions or you can come off mute. It's kind of a nice way to kind of use the out-of-the-box Teams features that we're all used to, but not let people do it for like the first 30 minutes just so we can kind of get through the structured content.
Yeah, so just a little bit more deeper dive into that. So if you're a co-organizer right now, you can make any of those changes during the meeting. However, starting in January, we released the ability for co-organizers to be able to change everything in the meetings, and that would be town halls and webinars. And it's coming out to a tenant near you shortly. If you even look at the roadmap, it does say it's still rolling out, but it started in January, so it's a slow roll. So keep that in mind. But those co-organizers then can do that. So if I were to set up, and I actually made this meeting, I set Michelle up as a co-organizer. So she pops in right away. She could go in there and make that change during the meeting so that in that scenario that Nick was saying, hey, you know what? We have everything disabled during the meeting, but at the end, I want people to come off mute and be able to ask a question. Very important to be able to do that very quickly from there because they have that co-organizer capability.
Took me a second to find that screenshot. So I can't see this in this meeting because I'm not a co-organizer, but that's what it looks like. It's underneath that three dots, and then, yep, I can go in and do it. It does seem to take, Don, I'm curious, like it always takes about 5 to 10 seconds for these options to kind of hydrate into the meeting.
I've noticed that too, yeah.
So it's not, like I try to just do it once a meeting, not like going on and off, or just, sometimes you just do something in Teams and it takes it a second, right? I start a screen share, about 5 seconds later, it's kind of up. As the example, that's why I'm not using PowerPoint Live right this second, because I'm toggling back and forth between all these things. Right?
Exactly.
But yeah, that's what that looks like. And then in the meeting option settings, like when you set up the meeting, that's where you go down here and you can specify, okay, this is who my co-organizer is, who's going to have that kind of, extra control. You don't have to have a co-organizer. It's not required, but boy, I sure like it because I think it, like if I'm gone, like let's say I'm sick that day, the co-organizer can do everything except cancel or change the time of the meeting. So it gives, because correct me, I'm there.
That's changing with this.
Tell us about that. Yeah. Okay.
They can do everything. Literally, they can change the title, they can change the date, time, description, webinars and town halls. You can add and remove presenters, update bios, everything that an organizer, which has been one of those things that for a very longest time, people have been asking for, right? What happens if Mary leaves the organization and she's the organizer for that particular event? Well, you're kind of out of luck unless you recreate the whole thing, right? So you have those types of scenarios where now the co-organizer add a group in there to be able to do those things and manage it, and then you don't have to worry about that original organizer having that issue.
Do you know how we're doing that? Because in the past, it was a limitation that the meeting object lived in the organizer's Exchange mailbox. So like there was this kind of infrastructure under the covers, which is why did we change that, or do we then share out the permission? If you happen to know, I'm just curious.
I think we're sharing out the permission on that because I don't think that's changing as far as where that object happens to be, because it still is the organizer, because it's still based off of the organizer's premium license. They have to have that premium license. So that means it has to be in their mailbox to be able to do that. So I think that's still in the mailbox and it's just giving permissions from that back end side of things.
Okay. Thanks. Yeah, the other settings in there hasn't really changed. Things like being able to use reactions, that sort of thing. I do want to call out one though, is we do have that managed Q&A app that we released a couple of years ago. It's really nice because it's a moderated Q&A. We got this a lot back when live events first came out, because this is how it renders over there too. They're like, hey, well, I want this feature where I don't want chat. I want people to be able to ask a question, but then I want to be able to curate that question either before it's answered or before everyone sees it, right? I want some control. I don't want people to ask, what are we doing with controversial political topic A, right? I don't want that going out to the company all hands. I might want to be able to answer that privately or dismiss it, right? Or answer it for everyone. There's a great big huge gotcha here, and I wish Don, correct me if we've changed this, I wish we made this a toggle or either or. If you use this managed Q&A, this is a Nick, it's not a requirement. You must turn off the meeting chat.
Yeah, oh no, absolutely.
If you don't do that, we will allow you to do both at once, and people get confused as heck on where they're supposed to put in their question.
Absolutely.
Yeah, use chat or use Q&A, don't use both. I'm pretty comfortable with, like, especially an internal meeting under 100 people, I just use the chat. I also like the interactivity, right? I do a little of that. Yeah, hey, put in where you're calling in from today, kind of stuff, just to kind of get people going. But every single time I've been in a session where both of these two things have been enabled, I wind up with this parallel work stream of trying to manage attendee engagement and just get stressed out and start yelling at the attendees, and it's just a bad experience for everybody. Sorry, I bring a lot of personal baggage to my facilitation, Don. I don't know if you do.
It's okay. That's good.
All right. A couple other meeting things, and then we'll switch to. So we're just still talking about Teams meetings. Everything we're talking about here shows up in this webinar thing. So the meeting with registrations. This will give us a nice level set. So we'll switch to webinars in a second. Green room. Now I can't remember, Don. Is this a premium feature, or do I have this now in regular Teams?
So Town Hall, you have it in. So in regular Teams, no, you have to have a premium to be able to have Green Room. But in Town Hall, you don't have to have premium, and in Webinar, you have to have premium.
Okay, let's.
It's convoluted.
Yeah, let's break that down and take a quick peek at it.
I think we actually have it on the premium slides. I think we call it out in both webinars and Town Hall. But just know, based on have to have premium for the most part, Town Hall is probably the only one you don't have to worry about.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, here, let's do it really quick. I'm gonna make a meeting. Let me add a couple of people to it. So here, I'll just put in one just to kind of get it to hydrate in there. Okay, great. Perfect. That looks good. All right, more options. So I'm scheduling just my regular Teams meeting like I normally would. I'm in a demo environment right here, and I do have the Teams premium license assigned in my demo environment. So when I'm setting up my meeting, this is where I go in. All right, so I went through that lightning fast, but I was in the meeting and I clicked meeting options. That brought me here to this page. This is where I can go in and choose who the co-organizer are things like this. We think of this as kind of like a set of production tools. And we're seeing there's kind of two here that are just kind of built into meetings and webinars. Again, I need to have
You're not showing, by the way.
Oh,
I'm just showing the slide. Yep.
Well, let's see what's happening here. Sorry, I thought I was doing. Can you see it now? I'm dragging a virtual machine over on top of the screen share. Do you see it?
Nope.
Right, let's
And while Nick is doing that, yeah, I got that wrong. I thought for sure it was webinar, or that Town Hall had it out of the box. It's Webinar has it out of the box, and Town Hall has a premium capability and meetings. So opposite. And did Nick freeze up? Uh-oh. I think Nick froze. Anybody else?
He's frozen for me too.
Okay.
Frozen.
Totally, completely frozen. All right. Well, good thing I have the deck as well. So give me a second and I will get to that. And I know he was probably going to try to show that, but we're going to go to this. All right. Give me a second. And then we'll wait for Nick to come back. That's why we tag team this, guys, especially when it comes to events, because you never know what's going to happen. All right, let me get to where he was at. Talked about that stuff. We were talking about co-organizer. And then the other settings, we were talking a little bit about green room. So just to make sure everybody's on top of that, webinar is out of the box. And just so you guys, the feature green room is a pre-meeting for your event, right? So the ability to be able to check in and make sure everything is okay, check cameras, all that kind of stuff before you even get to that next piece. not going to worry about a couple of these things. That's obviously about microphone and cameras, but being able to disable and both of them and then enable them as needed. Yes, we do have live reactions, especially in these large structured meetings. You do want to have that, but depending upon webinars or town halls, what's going on, you may have those or may want to choose to turn those off, right? On top of that, being able to raise hands and lower hands. Now, large structured meetings, yeah, great. Webinars, great. Town hall, we're talking a lot of people and a lot of that interactivity. You may not want any of those capabilities in there, and by default, those may not be on, especially in a town hall type scenario. But talking about large structured meetings, you definitely want to have that. And then knowing the fact is that you can see exactly who raised their hand and when they raised their hand, so you can. So when you can go back in and, say, hey, Charlotte, what was your question? And then Cassandra, and just check that off. By the way, Teams now has it that after they've come off mute and then they go back on, or they're talking and they go back on mute, it will automatically lower those hands. Before, you had to do it or they had to do it, right? So things like that have been updated to make that experience much better. As Nick was talking about, there is that Q&A app. That Q&A app really helps out with that structured meeting type scenario, very large structure. Town hall is a great way to be able to get an interactivity. This can be moderated or unmoderated. So out of the box, if you want to have it like a chat type thing, make sure that you turn off chat, but you can out of the box just do that. If you want to have a moderated experience, that means that questions coming in, you have moderators, designated moderators that are a part of the meeting, the event team. They can go through and just do answer those questions. If you want to publish them back out, you can grade it. If you want to dismiss them, you can do that. People can react to those. There's some settings that you can set up as you're doing that, but please test those ahead of time. Just make sure you know how they work and what's going on with that. And then I was talking about Green Room. There's Nick. He's back. Had a little home internet glitch. So
it's the city, because like a block away from us, they're doing something. So yeah, I just lost my internet. So I'm gonna keep my video off. I'm on my phone now. I'm so sorry.
Oh, okay.
Oh, so there's best practice. Have a backup for your network. Do you want to keep going?
I can.
Yeah, I'll see what I can fix while you're doing, and then keep going. I'll come in and comment. Thank you for finding the deck and sharing it.
Absolutely. So Green Room, I kind of talked about it. Just gives you an experience. This does, from an organizer perspective, you have the ability to start the meeting when you need to. And typically, and you'll see that like with Michelle in this meeting, we always go a couple minutes ahead of time. So have things ready to go, like have a slide that's maybe rotating, things like that, just important information, just letting people know that, heck, something's coming up and they're not ready yet, but have music running, have those types of things going, but always start that a couple times. Yeah, exactly. Music is very important to be able to do that. So keep that in mind as your kind of a best practices for these types of things. Outside of that, as your attendees come in, they're just going to see a blank screen that says, hey, this is the meeting event, and it'll be starting shortly, right? Can't customize that at this point. Things like that that will be coming in the future, but really do those things ahead of time and make sure you have your pre-event stuff ready to go. But Green Room is a great way to start it. But you do need premiums license for large structure meetings to be able to access the Green Room side of things. It's a meeting option. Manage what attendees see. We didn't talk about this, but I feel this is like one of the best, getting towards that whole live event side of things and actually doing better than live event as far as being able to put it on the stage for the attendees to see. And in this particular scenario, you'll notice that I have a off-stage area on the left-hand side, and this is my actual stage, what attendees are seeing, right? So I can pre-stage, basically, make sure everybody has their cameras on, things like that. I can set that up and then just have the one presenter, or I can have up to 7 or 8 presenters on there if I need to do that with content. Right now, content is automatically displayed in that stage. I saw on the roadmap that that's changing, where you'll be able to pre-stage content. So say, for instance, I don't want the content on there right away, but I want I want Nick to share the screen out first, right? Share the presentation out first. It's going to be over on the left-hand side off stage. And once that I'm ready, I can toggle that to come over onto the stage. Otherwise, in current scenario, I'm going to have to go ahead and share and it will automatically pop on stage, right? Then in general, I have this toggle capability to be able to access and say, hey, I want to bring in this person to be able to be spotlighted, so to speak. And it's really spotlighting that person, but really doing on the stage at the time. So it's a little bit of producing side of things. So keep that in mind as we're moving forward with that. All right, and there are, once we get to the premium features, that is a premium feature that also in scenarios is available without the premium, and then you have to have premium otherwise. This is a premium feature, hide attendee names, right? Very important to make sure that in some scenarios, and especially in, we've seen this with government type scenarios where you have to make sure everybody is not, attendees cannot see each other, right? That's important to do. You could have one of those scenarios where you don't want to have competitors seeing competitors, right? So this is an option in meetings, is a Teams premium feature to be able to enable that. But once you do that, they being the attendees won't be able to see each other. However, you being the organizer will be able to see that information. Who logged in, who actually attended that event, and seeing their name and seeing their registration information, if it's webinar and town hall, those types of scenarios. All right. Large structure meetings. Let's just break this down very quickly. Out of the box, you get these capabilities without having to worry about that Teams premium capability, right? So again, co-organizer, all those capabilities. Presenter roles, moderated Q&A app, green room, out of the box, don't need the premium. Again, notice what's going on, but this is where that premium license comes in for those large structured meetings. What attendees see, hide attendees' names, lobby branding, we'll talk about that here later on, and meeting templates is another thing that's available through the Teams premium side of things.
I dropped the, I think I'm back. Yeah, let's see what happens here. I'm going to hold off sharing my screen just in case I crush my 5G. But I dropped in a link to the Teams premium versus Teams license. And like, we're not trying to sell you a Teams premium. I mean, that'd be great, right? If everyone licensed it, I got like 3 kids in college. So yeah, that'd be fantastic if you bought it. But I'm joking, by the way. The consideration to think of here for these features, as long as the meeting organizer has Teams premium, these things hydrate in. So my broad guidance to all of my customers is consider having an internal community of I'm making quotes that you can't see, meeting organizers, right? Your exec admins or your marketing people, not everyone, but the folks who kind of tend to run big meetings in some way. Stand up a monthly office hours for them, right? Do the kind of best practices sharing that we're doing right here. In those office hours, have 20 minutes of best practices and 40 minutes of open discussion, Q&A, peer support, and then have either a Viva Engage or a team kind of running for asynchronous support. And then what you do is you make people join those communities as a condition of getting the Teams premium license. So we're trying to what I'm really trying to do is I'm lazy. I'm trying to avoid, as an IT professional, having to do a whole bunch of end user support for what are essentially, option settings. But there's just so many of them, people kind of get overwhelmed. Yeah. So that's just kind of that's Nick's kind of like, trying to make it a little bit easier. Stand up a community. You get a little bit of bonus. You're the one person in your group that gets the Teams premium license. If you join this community and you're active in it, you get the peer support for it. And then in the community, we'll do coaching on, do I really need to do this green room thing or not? And not like opening a ServiceNow ticket. Because what do people do? Right? They don't see the perspective of all the stuff we have to support. They just think this is the most important thing that I'm doing this month. So they open up ServiceNow and they say, hey, I've got my, my division all hands. Could I have someone sit on the call just in case? Right? And we're trying to avoid that just in case, right? That tends to crush us sometimes when people just aren't comfortable with the new technology. Okay, I'm off the soapbox. Sorry, Don. But
no, but that's a very important soapbox, because I will tell you, I've done that as my role. I've gone out to a customer and did that where they were practicing doing that, and I was there as that support person, moral support, right? But realistically, you know, if you give them that training and you make sure that they're comfortable with that from that side of things, I think that's very valuable overall. So great point. Thanks, Nick.
Thanks.
All right.
Sorry, I'm gonna do one more ramble, but I'll make this much quicker.
No.
I'm gonna drop a screenshot into the meeting chat too. This is what I see when I click new meeting inside of Microsoft Teams. Sorry, it's gonna sound like we're selling premium again. One of the other features that Teams Premium lets you do here at the very bottom, this concept of a meeting template, is as the admin, you can go into the admin center for Teams and create a template with all the options preset in it and save it with a friendly name, right? Like all hands call or, you know, quarterly kickoff, whatever you want to call it, that means something to your users. And then when you click that new meeting drop down, the people you've assigned the template to through meeting policy, they will see that as one of the options.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a really nice way to kind of get ahead of, you know, that, again, that ServiceNow or whatever your ticketing system is. Hey, just in case, can you help me out? All right, I'm going to sit down with the vice president's executive admin. He's going to tell me, you know, what they call this thing. It's the, you know, quarterly operational review. We're going to make a template called quarterly operational review and save it. We're going to assign it to that admin. And it's got things like green room and chat disabled, all kind of preset. And they know that's just what they need to do. And they can go into options and change those too. But I find that gives a real nice guardrail beyond, you know, trying to like do it all through training.
Yeah. Well, and to keep in mind too, that template, meeting template side of things specifically would be really for large structured meetings for the most part. You will not be able to, and I've had this conversation with customers, I can't take a webinar and make that into a template because the registration pieces is what makes a webinar, and it does not have that if I were just going to do a regular meeting template. From my understanding, there is not a capability to do that yet. Potentially, things like being able to duplicate a webinar or duplicate a town hall will get you around those type of things. And so I have one already, and then I can go from there. That's going to be important. So,
yeah. Webinar is actually considered a template today, so it's one of the templates.
Yes, exactly. Okay. Moving on. Let's talk about webinars. And Nick, jump in if you want to walk through this or whatever. I know that you're not going to be able to be at your computer, but I can also walk through this pretty quickly.
Keep going. I might be back up. I'm hesitant. I might try and screen share and do a demo, but keep going. And I'll save that so we're at a point of I can comfortably hop off and come back if I need to.
And yes, I will do that. And by the way, Jason, thank you for putting that in there. I'm glad that that's how you're doing, and I think it's very important to make sure that you're training for those types of scenarios. So absolutely, you're right. Yes. Yeah, I see the grapes that you have too. So thank you, Jason. All right, webinars. Let's get to this and we'll get to town halls and get some more best practices that we're going on. So it's really, looking at the webinar side of things, it's really about that external scenario where you need to have a registration set up for that event. Okay, so that's where webinars different than our large structured meetings and definitely different than town halls. When I'm going into that registration, right, so I'm going into my calendar right now. I don't necessarily have it in my new Outlook for Windows, but I have it in Outlook. In here, I'll be able to then go in here and then say, hey, I want that new, from the drop down, I'll say I want a new webinar, and it will come into here. You will notice, especially on that left-hand side here, that this is different than what you normally see. You don't see that in a regular Teams meeting. You see this in webinar and you see in town hall because there's other features that we need to configure for those types of scenarios. Right, so things like what are the specifics of that particular event, right? So I need to be able to fill that out. You'll notice event roles, right? So I can see things like who's my organizer? That's you, by the way. And then who's my co-organizer? Then who are my presenters? Oh, and even, by the way, add external presenters from my organization so they get a unique attend link, right? Those types of things. By the way, I can also do bios and branding because once I create this, it creates a web page, a registration page for this particular event. Right, so then you can push that URL out to people so that they can then register for the event and go from there. And that's the other piece, right? That registration form and automated emails that go along with it that allow you to be able to do some settings. right? So out of the box, no customizations of any of those emails. But with premium, you get customizations of those emails. You can, without premium, you can do some branding capabilities across the board, right? But really, that premium licensing gives you the ability to customize the emails to a little bit higher extent. Oh, and by the way, out of the box, you can go ahead and add more fields to that registration form, right? All of that information that gets embedded into that Teams meeting, right, webinar meeting, and is accessible from there. We also have integrations into other third-party systems for that as well, to be able to download and interact. But the other pieces, right now, 1,000-person capacity. And the reason why is interactivity, right? So we want them to be able to chat. We want them to be able to, thumbs up or applaud or whatever those faces in these types of webinars, and that gives us our capability to do that. We can customize the email branded, the branding overall for this particular event, by the way, that goes to the registration page, as well as the emails that are blasted out from the webinar side of things, and things that we can adjust. We can just the image that you see here, the banner that's seeing here, you can put a logo in there as well, and the overall color scheme that you want. It's limited, but it does give you some of those capabilities. You can also preview that before you send it out via desktop or mobile app, just so you can see how that works. You will be able to go, once you go and get that initial setup, once you get the presenters in there and your organizers and those types of things, it's important then to make sure that you're setting up your bio, your theming. You'll see a registration area and you'll see a reports area that you can get more information after you set the initial description and title and those presenters. Once you get that saved, then you're going to be able to go and make some more of those changes in there and set those pieces up.
Are you care if can I still the screen share for a second?
You can.
Now.
Oh, you're back now.
Yeah. So well, let's just see. Trust and verify. So I've got an alternate routing for the internet here. But if I suddenly go away, you didn't offend me, Don. My connection dropped. No, come back.
All right.
So okay. So what I did while he was talking is I just went into Teams and I just quickly kind of created a webinar. So I just went into calendar, new meeting, new webinar, and then this is the options for it. Let me just validate. Can you see that? Like a list of options, Don, with webinars?
We are all good here. And this is good because, from a configuration perspective, we're talking about the first sections, right? So this is title, date, time, description. And by the way, whatever you put here, this is going to go in the email. And more importantly, this is going to go to the registration site. And so when you're doing the description, making sure you're very descriptive, because you want people to know what this particular webinar is all about. You have the formatting capability. I mean, all of the options you have there, you have links, you have that capability. Once I've done that, then I can go in my co-organizers and then I can add those in. Remember, we were talking about this, is the co-organizer, and if it's hit your tenant now, will have the exact same capability as what an organizer has. The organizer, if you're using Teams premium features, that's still carried on, even if that organizer is not in the meeting. Amber, in this case, will still be able to access those Teams premium features because Nick had the license associated to him. Okay. Presenters from the organization, they will get they'll be able to get that that ICS so they can actually see it in their invite, right, in their Outlook. And then external users. The nice thing about external presenters is they're going to get a unique join link, so that they will be able to, only them will be able to click on that link and get in. If somebody else got that and he forwarded it, then they will not be able to get into that particular event, right? Once you get this saved, if you ever need to re-up that external join link, that unique external join link, you'll have that capability after the fact. Okay.
Not sure
if you scroll down,
still accurate. Sometimes we take them out. Okay.
And then there is the event access, and because I think are you in the Microsoft tenant?
No, I'm in the demo environment.
Oh yeah, you have sensitivity. You have some sensitivity.
It applies it by default. Actually, lets us show it. Yeah, it
does. The nice thing is that without sensitivity labels, not everybody does it, but if you do, you notice it does affect what's going on here, and you would only be able to do public, but you notice you can do your organization as well. That's another option, right? So that's one thing to keep in mind. Additionally, you will be able to say, hey, you know what? I don't want all these emails going out. You know, I don't want it to do that. I have another system that does all that stuff for me for registration and all that stuff. You can disable that, enable attendee emails as you see there. And lastly, allow sharing to social media from an event site. So it will actually drop in some of those media links or the social links so that they can then click on that and it will share it out to wherever. So if you want this to be promoted, great opportunity to do that. Last on this page is the attendee experience, and this is AKA meeting options. Now, what they do here is they shrink the main ones, right? The main ones you may want to have. And so you'll see things like you talked about before, manage what attendees see, allow mic and camera, Q&A, green room, hidden name, attendee names, that kind of stuff is there. Hey, if you want to do more, you can do more, right? But this is the quick way to be able to get those that are very, you know, most used within a webinar type scenario. All right, so right now, we can't do anything else unless we save and send the updates. Because once we save and send the updates, that's going to send it up to the presenters. It's also going to unlock some of the other things, right? So that's going out.
I think
Once
under the covers, it's that save button is what just created the object in the Exchange Online mailbox.
Exactly. Yep.
So
it's
we
ready to go
kind of
now.
need that to exist to edit the sub records. You know, somewhere there's
Exactly.
like a JSON manifest. So just don't tell your users this. That's why sometimes these things don't hydrate in until you hit the save button.
Exactly. So if you go on the left-hand side now, there's in the navigation area, presenter bios now is available, theming is available, all those other areas. So presenter bios gives me the ability, and there you go. Nick got a update on that. If I needed to put an image in there, I can put an image, I can put their company, I can put their title, I can put their LinkedIn, I don't believe we still say Twitter profile, but yes, X profile.
Wait, does it say that?
I know. Anyways.
We'll have to fix that. Okay.
We will have to fix that. But a bio, that kind of stuff, and that would be available from the registration page, right? So when they go to registration page, they see that, they hover over that person, so Corey's information, and they will get that in, or they click on it, they'll get the bio and all that stuff from there. Additionally, go back to presenter bio.
Sorry, I'm so sorry. Yeah.
No problem. Notice the ... on the far right-hand side. One of the things that I do from a best practice is this. I don't like to give too many people co-organizer rights. So what I will do is I'll give them presenter rights. And that allows like my moderators to get in there, but not be presenters. And so then I go and hide them from the site so that they don't show up there because they're not an expert. I don't want them, well, they are an expert that I don't want them presenting. So then I want to hide them from the site, right? So you notice I can hide them from the site. I can also move them up and down. So if I want to have this person on top versus this other person, right, I can do that. So you notice as soon as you hide them, you get that little icon on the right-hand side. And yes, if I were to view the published page, you will see that only one is in there, right, based off of that. So that kind of gives you an idea of what you can do. So
I really like your demo, Dolly. Tell me more things to show.
Okay. Theming. Let's take a look at that for 2 seconds.
All right.
So yeah, not much. I hate to say it. Change a banner. It does give you the actual pixel, max that file size that you want to have. There we go. Thank you for having that already. Nice. Okay. You can zoom in, zoom out, up and down. And then you can also do the same thing with the logo, and then you can do color as well.
And that's kind of it, right? I usually get a question like, hey, we want to do this and this. We want to embed something here. Like, or how about this one?
Color.
Yeah, we hear the hex code for our logo. I'm like, yeah, it could be anything you want as long as it's one of these 9 colors.
Well, so, yeah, exactly. That's all you get. That's all you get. So. And
so, all right.
Luckily,
let's do. Oh, here. So I'm gonna call out really quick. So now remember, I hit the save button once already and created the object. It's really subtle down there at the bottom. Notice now as I'm doing stuff, it's kind of saving automatically as we go.
Exactly. Yep. And in some areas that's not always the case. So keep that in mind. All right. So now From here, I want to do some more configuration. So I'm going to go into the actual registration area. And in the registration area, I have some other features. Okay, so depending upon if you have premium license or not, if you have, most of these are going to be premium license, by the way, except for the form area down on the bottom. That form area, you don't have to have premium license for any of that. But for this, you can actually set a limit, the event capacity. I want 250. I want to put a wait list. Oh, by the way, I also want to manually approve every single registration that comes in. Hey, I want to have the start date and end date, so I don't have to manage any of that stuff, right? I want to cut it off before the event starts, right? Those types of things. Additionally, the forms area, not premium. You go in there and you'll have some pre-canned fields, but you can also do custom fields. So in here, I can just say, hey, I want to have another box that says, Instagram handle if you want to do it that way. Long input are required. If you're familiar with Microsoft Forms, it kind of uses a little bit of Microsoft Forms to be able to do this stuff. So it gives me some options to be able to add it, and all those are going to be on the registration link site, so that you have access to that right away. Perfect.
Other things I can buy from Microsoft. All right, bear with it. Let's see. I'm just kind of playing here. Was there? So
No,
there, I can kind of go in and do it.
That was the biggest things, yeah. And
yeah,
go ahead and
kind of
you
just
save.
yeah,
this
sort
is
of
what
like
I'm
your
saying, you
info
actually have
path
to
101.
Yeah, and you do have to save these. That's the thing, is sometimes it saves it for you and sometimes it doesn't. All right. Let's jump to the attendee status, and this is not going to matter at this point because attendees, it just
I haven't sent this out, right? No one's
haven't sent it out yet, and so people then would be able to go in and register for that type of scenario. You know what? You could, by the way, Nick, just grab that link and throw it in there. Yeah, and this is exactly what it would look like.
Yeah, let's do it. Okay, here. So if you everyone be nice. I'm gonna drop this into the meeting chat. So this is in real time. Let's see, is that the right link?
That is the right link.
Yeah,
that is.
Interesting that it. Yeah. So the short URL is like virtual. Sorry, what I just did is I just grabbed the link and pasted it in. If you hover over it, and I probably should have made that a friendly name, like Nick's webinar or something like that. But yeah, if you want to go in and fill that out, so here I'll do it with us. So here I'll put this in really quick. I'll put in just myself, Nick Stillings, and my email is nick@yahoo.com. I never got around to upgrading that. And then I've read the terms. Go ahead and click register. Right, there it is. And I went through really quick. I didn't save those extra fields, right? Remember I added that, but that's where it's kind of taking me out.
Exactly.
We do got to.
There's his X. Okay, all right. That's good. Just not on the back end. Okay, that's right. All right. Okay.
And then, so I typed in a fake email. I guess I should have done that. What I just got to is sent to that email is an ICS file with the actual invite and the join link.
Exactly. Yeah, and by the way, if any of the information about the event, like if it changed or anything like that, guess what? There are emails that will automatically go out to let people know what's going on. And see, we're already starting to get some registrations. So thank you guys for doing that. We appreciate that.
Do I want Dennis to come? I guess so. Okay, all right.
Yeah. But you notice when you click on the more, it gives me any of the things that you may have filled out in the registration. And then, by the way, this gets updated as things happen. Like if you go and cancel, right? So if you go and cancel this registration, it'll actually update to say canceled, right? So you can see that information specifically on how I have things set up, right?
I notice I'm having to click away from it to kind of get it to rehydrate, to come back in.
Yep.
So,
Exactly.
All
right. We did see the emails, but just if you jump on the email side of things, I want you to see now out of the box, you will not get the edit button. Well, you'll see it. It just won't be available for you to do anything. That edit button is the only thing from a Teams Premium side of things you can do. You can go into any of these emails and you can add other text. If you want to add the other links, if you want to do those things, you can actually pull that information in. But again, it has to have Teams Premium in there to be able to do that. So I can modify this particular email address or this email that's going to go out to anybody who is doing the registration, right? So yeah, and then you can put a link to whatever you want to have at that point.
And I think it's kind of a rich text level of editing.
It is. It is.
I don't think I can insert any more images in here, can I? I'm pretty
No,
sure I
I've not
Okay, all right.
found a way to be able to do that, unfortunately.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
you can personalize. So if you delete like the
That's what
event
it's gonna
name,
look
you
like.
can put the event name back in there, those types of things. So.
Yeah.
The reports give me more specific information about the event. So if you jump to the report side for a second. And obviously we don't have anything else going on. This is your meeting reports, but I also want you to notice there is a tab for engagement, and we call that out. That's a Teams premium feature. It does show you overall to the timeline who thumbs up, who clapped, whatever, who came on camera and who unmuted too is also available in there from an engagement side of things. Otherwise, the attendance report, you'll see all of that information for who showed up, when did they show up, when did they leave, right? So that's out of the box and that's downloadable. If you have the premium license, you get the engagement report as well. And that's all part of the Excel spreadsheet CSV file that you get after that. Okay.
I'll drop a screenshot of this, like what it looks like, into the meeting chat, just as a sample. So what is kind of interesting though is you get a timeline on it, so you kind of get to see like reactions and engagement over time. So
yep,
like
really nice.
Don's doing his thing. It's happy face. Then I come online and engagement just tanks. I see that again and again. Yeah.
Exactly.
So coaching opportunity for me.
Yep. Do me a favor, and so recordings, that's the next one I want to jump into. And this is kind of similar to what you see in the town hall setting area. Once this is published, then you have this ability to push it out. It will also go to an Azure webpage so that people will have access to view it, or you can just deal with the video yourself, right? So you have that capability. And last but not least, webinars is connected apps. And this is integration that you may have with other marketing platforms, HubSpot, Pardot, and Marketor are the three right now. Also, there is, if you have Dynamics 365 marketing module, you would also be able to, connect it with that and get that information in there as well. But there are some integrations in here so that you don't have to just drop that information out of in Excel and go from that route. So keep that in mind.
These are, they're kind of limited. I do get this question a lot, like, hey, we're using System X.
Yep.
So what I find is if people already have a webinar-based platform and it's working for them, they may not want to consider the Teams
webinar.
Yep, and it's totally. So an example, the Minnesota Microsoft 365 user group, to speak on behalf of the board of directors, has been using Eventbrite for decades, right? Since it was a SharePoint user group. And one of the reasons is we get a lot of historical data, right? To kind of see who's attending or what organizations or things like that. So we don't want to kind of switch off of that. And so until we see Eventbrite show up here, we're doing a little, actually, we don't do this as a webinar. We do it as a Teams meeting, and we go grab the hyperlink to the join meeting, and then that's what Eventbrite is sending out. So we do see these kind of, hybrid scenarios a lot. Microsoft uses On24. For many of our global webinars, as individuals, Don and I are encouraged to do this with Teams webinars, for the scope of the business that we're responsible for. But for a national webinar, we'll use a couple of vendors that scale even more than what Teams does out of the box, right? Exactly. And we can certainly build that in Azure, but it just makes more sense to kind of use an established platform for something like that.
Absolutely. All right. Just keeping watch on time, Nick. I think we have probably I know we're supposed to go until 3, but should be ish.
Do we want to, why don't
let's go through town hall. And let's it's a little.
Let me see if I can demo it. I'll demo it quickly, and then we'll step through the slides. Okay, just to kind of, and if my demo crashes again, I'll come back. So again, quick housekeeping. So I'm in Teams. I went to the calendar. I clicked the new meeting drop down. I see the types of meetings that I could create, which are the out of the box ones. If I had Teams Premium, my administrator could create meeting templates with more of these with options pre-configured. I don't want to do that for every single thing that's out there, but it's really nice to kind of put up those guardrails for my organizers. So when they do this, all these settings are already there and they aren't bugging me on what do I click here? Sorry, I'm jaded and cynical today. So, okay. So we're going to do a town hall. Let's call this the Q4 all hands. And I'll set it to be here, maybe at the end of the week. And it's going to go I'm going to go lightning fast here, Don, so just do commentary. Yep. We're in Minnesota, so we'll put some Swedish text as our description. All right, here's my event group. So these are, the people who are going to be, presenting it or doing it with me. So I'll just put in a couple. We'll make Amber a co-organizer. I love your tip about presenters. Yeah, keep going. Sorry.
I was saying, and notice it's very similar to the webinar beginning.
Yep.
Right. So a lot of the same things are there, except when we get to the event access, it's going to be a little bit different.
Yeah. So I got to kind of choose. So again, sorry, I didn't think about this in my demo, but I was demoing something in Entra ID. So there's a sensitivity table thing coming across the top. So if you've got those turned on, you can kind of control who can do what based on the label policy that you have. I do want to call out one thing here with external presenters. If the external presenters are on a Teams endpoint, like the Teams desktop client, they're gold. However, Teams Room and mobile and web is kind of an ever-evolving space. And so I've run into issues where I've got like an external presenter on a Teams Room, but they're like a federated user in that tenant. And so the takeaway, do a dry run. If you do external presenters, just do a dry run. Doesn't have to be very long. Just have them join, make sure they can get in. I have caught we'll talk about this at the very end when Don and I complain about things, or what we call our critical tips. Never surprise your event team. That's what I always tell my users. Like you've told me that it's going to be Vice President Jones from her office, and instead Vice President Jones is on site with a partner in a Teams room, and that Teams room is logged into another right. So unfortunately or fortunately, Teams shows up with all the baggage of Entra ID in tow. And that's just not something that's ever really visible to users. It's a little bit hard to like figure out in advance sometimes. I mean, generally it just works, but every time I say that, there's some weird edge case where someone's like on the GCC tenant and something isn't turned on. So if you have an external presenter, just double check it before you get here. Okay, I'm gonna go through the rest pretty quick, Don. So attendee emails, that's like a little email reminder, like what we saw with webinars. Manage, these are all turned on. I'll get to this so we can actually see it in real time. Oh. Reminds me to save if I try to go to other stuff. The rest of this looks very similar to the way webinar work, except it doesn't have that registration requirement. So once we get to recordings, those will be managed the same. I'm going to go ahead and publish this. All right, that's going to be the join link for it. So let me go ahead and copy that. And then let me go ahead and I'll join it as the organizer. So here I'm coming in to join the Q4 all hands. And this will let us see a little bit of that manage what attendees see experience. Don, I'll go ahead. I'll bring in my, I've got two users on two other laptops. Let me bring them in too while we're doing this. Do you want to talk to this while I'm bringing it up? It'll take me a second to grab it and jump in.
Especially for the town hall, you notice that this is set up automatically. You see the manage screen on the left-hand side. That is by the default, that's enabled because you really want to be able to produce this event. If you were to start to do a PowerPoint presentation in here, you would see that pop on right away. You notice, as we were kind of talking about, there is an event. This is new, by the way. I want you to notice the event, the chat for this event. There is the everyone side, and now they're just recently released is the event group, which is a separate chat for just presenters and co-organizers and organizer, right? So you can have that. What I've done in the past is I always say, hey, spin up another chat, back channel, whatever you need to do on that side, just to make sure everything is working. So you can have those conversations behind the scenes. Now you don't have to do that. But the event group chat, that allows you to have just your team have that physical chat, which is, thank you. We've been looking for that for a long time. Otherwise, it looks like a Teams meeting, which is way different than what we saw in the Teams live event scenario, where it's completely changed. For those people who have done Teams live event, it looks way different than a regular Teams meeting.
Good dancing. While you're doing that, I grabbed a second laptop. I joined. On that second laptop, I'll just fire a PowerPoint. And so what's happening is, as I'm turning these things on, so again, behind me, I've got two demo laptops, so I'm signed into two different users. Look at what's happening on the left-hand side as we're seeing the content that's becoming available to the organizer here in a second. Now, so this doesn't get too confusing. Some of you have seen me do this joke before. I raided my kid's toy closet, so we're going to have our two executives be this stuffed penguin and Mr. Potato Head. Michelle, I'm so sorry. The puppets you gave me are in the office, so I will have to go get them. Okay. So, hi everyone. I'm your event team. We're ready to go. Okay. So, we turn away from that. So in Town Hall, we have that manage what attendees see feature is kind of turned on by default. So what that means is my attendees don't see anything until I go over here and explicitly click these little toggles, right? So even if my people have turned on their camera, they don't show up until I click that little toggle. and that brings them on screen. So it's kind of like spotlighting it, like what Michelle did for us manually a little bit ago. So if I want to bring Corey and Amber on, there they are together. If I want to bring her shared screen on, I'll do that as well too. And so now that's what my attendees are going to see. Maybe we're going to do an opening. Both of them are going to talk together. Then Corey is going to talk by himself for a second. So I'm going to take Mr. Potato Head off. Then he's going to get done with his spot. And Amber is going to do a passionate look directly at the camera and encourage people to make it through the end of the fiscal year. So I will bring her up just full screen like that. And then we're going to have a break and a transition. I'll bring the slide deck back up. So notice. Yeah, so I'm just kind of managing all that, and that's what's popping up.
And he's a producer at this point. He's really doing the producing for that particular event. And no, right now, just so you know, right now we're in the green room. We haven't even started this event at this point, right? So, and I know what you're going to do next is you're going to share what it looks like from the end user perspective. So, he's going to go on.
I'll do it in the browser
here.
So now I'm really pushing the. So looking out the window, I see the truck of people that were in the street appear to be on a break. So I'm going to assume my internet's going to stay up here for the next 15 minutes.
Luck.
Okay. So now I'm signed in as just a completely different user who's just an attendee, right? So I'm joining the all hands as them. Open like that. I do have a screen rendering thing there. We'll just ignore that for a second. Okay, there. So this is what they see. Right? Is nothing's happening yet. Right, we're kind of waiting for this thing to start. So what I have to do now, let me minimize that and go back to that producer view. I was over here. So we're pre-start event. One little call out, even though these people are off the screen, we do go ahead and mux the audio, and that's all live. So even if I'm not on screen, I don't want to start, babbling away or, eating Doritos as Dawn is wont to do, things like that. I want to make sure that they mute them. But nothing's happened. The attendees don't see a thing. Now we do go ahead and have like Q&A live. All right, so I can go ahead and make an announcement. Hey, we're going to start in a minute. Here, let's do that really quick. About to start. Go ahead and post that, and then let me toggle back over to see what my attendee sees is. Oh, see that little red pip lets me know that there's a thing there, and there's the announcement. So I can kind of start to do that sort of interaction. Hey, I can ask questions. Is this going to be recorded? Will we have a chance to ask the vice president a question, something like that? Now I'm going to go ahead and click start. Right, so what's happening now under the covers is the recording initiates, the encoder. Sorry, go ahead.
And by default, that's enabled by default. Like recording is automatically set for that. So there's some things that town hall template already has. Manage what attendees see, recording, disable audio and video. All of that is enabled by default. So keep that in mind. All right. So, and then, so now. There we go.
Did you catch that little delay? Remember I said it takes like 15 seconds for the stuff to come over. So here, let's do this. Let's take the slides off camera and let's introduce our two speakers. And they're now talking and kind of doing stuff, right? But what's happening behind the covers is we're actually encoding this content. We're using Azure Media Services under the covers. We're sending it across Microsoft's Content Delivery Network inside of Microsoft 365. You may even have an enterprise content delivery network that's receiving it. It's going through proxy servers in your building, and then it shows up here on the user's screen. Right? Not a big deal, right? It's like, the Super Bowl is 7 seconds delayed. It's just like that, except there's two things that tend to trip up. Number one is my presenters, they're so used to doing Teams meetings, they kind of forget that there's this delay, right? So they'll say, okay, any questions? Put them in Q&A. All right, seeing none, let's move on. And they forget that the audience is like, 17 seconds behind them and has to wait for that any questions to go in before they can answer it. The other thing is they will do something like, hey, let's go around the horn and hear from everybody. Des Moines, how are you guys doing? New York, how are you? And they forget this isn't a Teams meeting. These people are watching a stream, like watching YouTube live. And it lets them do things like pause and rewind and stuff like that, but there's no way for them to come off mute and sort of call back home into the meeting itself that's underneath the covers that's driving all this thing. So that's more of a presenter thing. And it always catches executives off guard because and then they shouldn't, right? They're running the business. They're not thinking of the nuances of how packets are coming across the internet. But we just kind of have to caution. It's kind of nice to have like a moderator to kind of, just a second, Don, let me post that question. And why don't you share a little more while we wait for people to reply? Exactly. What I'm really doing is saying, hey, Don, you idiot, you forgot it's going to take 20 seconds, but I'll cover for you. Person never see that.
Again, always.
Yes. Okay. I think that's all I had for my exciting demo here.
Okay, great. I'm glad we got the Mr. Potato Head in there. So thank you.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, got to work it in. Yes. Okay. We are done with our town hall. All the other stuff here is like regular Teams things.
Exactly.
Oh, let's do one more thing though. We're
Oh,
slowly
yes.
adding more controls to pop out the little different windows inside of Teams. So this is like the content control window. I could go dock that on another monitor if I wanted to. We do create a chat that's just kind of like a back channel chat for everyone. I can't pop that out yet, but eventually I'll be able to. And what I like about this is, I mentioned earlier, I've got 3 monitors. I kind of like to lay them out as my control surface so I can see everything happening at once, right? I don't want to be toggling back and forth between Q&A and the chat with the speakers. I will also bring my phone up and join on Teams on the phone and like use that just to like look at like the chat or the raise hand if it's a meeting. I find you just can't have enough screen real estate to keep track of what's going on in these great big meetings. So, okay, let's go ahead and end it. So as one of the co-organizers, I get this button, kind of nice, the presenters don't. I'm going to say go ahead and end the event. That's going to stop the broadcast. It's going to kind of start, caching the recording and things like that. And then if I go back over to my attendee,
now, hang on. Before you do that, I want you to notice something.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
This is a new feature that just came out. So if you have Green Room, and this is across anytime you use Green Room on any of your events, as soon as you end the event, especially in webinars and town halls, it takes you back to the Green Room. And so right now, Nick and presenters are in the Green Room. So you can have
the broadcast has stopped. No one is seeing what's happening.
Stopped. Yeah, totally stopped. And now you can have a follow-up conversation afterwards. And then once they're truly done, right, then you can end the meeting from the drop down, all that kind of stuff that you would normally do.
Any feedback for next quarter, right? So we're doing our debrief and, people start dropping. Oh, that went great. That went good. Don, we still heard the Doritos, right? We kind of go through all that. Sorry, I'm hyper fixed on that.
Exactly.
And now we can go, now once I leave, then I'm, out of it.
Or in the meeting or whatever. Yep.
Yeah. So just, so under the covers, it's kind of a Teams meeting with some controls. Then the Teams service is picking this up and encoding it. And notice if I go to share, I can share a screen. I can share a single window, presenter mode, whiteboard, PowerPoint Live. I can't share the live features, PowerPoint Live.
Exactly.
What we're under the covers with that, what we do is in the Teams client, we're actually rendering with a PowerPoint web app. That makes performance go really well, and our embedded video works. But for the town hall, because we want to encode that and blast it out to 10,000 people, we want an actual screen scrape coming out of the client, right? The actual screen
it's
frames.
A smaller, it's a smaller.
It makes the encoding a little bit easier. So,
agreed.
Okay, that was the town hall.
All right, good, thank you. Let's do this. I know that there was a couple things. We talked about premium. Let's talk about premium webinar and premium town hall. So let me go back and present.
Do you want to share? Okay, yeah.
Yep. Give me 2 seconds. Where did that go? Which one did they do this? Event production. Yeah, there we go. I'll do it from here.
I can grab it too, but I gotta remember which monitor I'm looking at. Okay.
Exactly.
It's rendering. Okay, it's up.
All right, let me jump. Large. Premium. Here we go. So let's talk and just make sure you guys understand, what do you get out of the box webinar versus what do you get out of the box town hall, and then premium on top of that, right? So the webinar, going back, that email registration piece out of the box, this is what you're going to get. Again, make sure you understand for webinar, 1,000 attendees, and with that 1,000 attendees, you do get that live reactions, you get the interactivity piece. Yeah, you can do Q&A app with a town hall, but you also can do regular chats if you need to. Presenter modes, dynamic layouts, as I mentioned, the co-organizer thing rolling out now to organizations. By the way, if you use breakout rooms, this number changes because breakout rooms, you can only have up to 300 people in there. You cannot go over 300 attendees in for that event, all right? So you're not going to be able to do breakout rooms. Attendee reporting, Dynamics 365 integration, and Green Room out of the box. Premium gives you a lot more features. Where town hall, manage what attendee sees is by default. You get that. Manage what you have to have premium for manage what attendees see. Again, that link that we threw in the chat tells you about what needs that premium feature and goes from there. You get waitlist and manual, you get the automatic reminders, and you can customize those email reminders. RTMP, as Nick was kind of talking about, gives you that capability, as well as the engagement analytics we showed you a little bit about, and that ability to hide attendees' names. That's out of the box, or I should say premium. If we jump to the town hall side of things a little bit, by default, right? Out of the box, you can do 10,000 attendees. However, if you're in a larger organization, you need more, you're going to need the premium license to be able to access that. And by the way, just recently, this moved from 20 to 50,000. And we have another update. It's going to go to 100,000 shortly. So keep that in mind. You can do up to 15 concurrent sessions for town hall. So if you were doing a conference and you want to be able to use town hall for that, you could do that. You can do 15 concurrent. By the way, premium 50, major big difference. Co-organizers, automated invitation. If you choose to let town hall send that out, you can then put those your security group in there or email distribution list, and we'll automatically send that out and updates as needed. Green room out of the box, manage what attendees see. RTMP in there as well, attendee and on-demand recording. And by the way, that on-demand recording is like the DVR capability that you see in a lot of these types of things, as Nick was talking about. You can pause it, you can start it up again, you can get back to live, or you can go back and listen to something else. And then ECDN capability. So if you're utilizing ECDN, they just changed recently. Now we can do Microsoft and third-party ECDN on both this and premium side of things. You get a little bit more capabilities with premium, especially with the languages, email customizations. And by the way, you get real-time event monitoring through the Microsoft ECDN license that's a part of the premium SKU. Outside of that, I do want to talk about 2 seconds on the premium side of things, because if you do have Teams Premium available, there is this branded meetings feature you may want to consider, especially when you're doing webinars and town hall, and have a more professional look and feel. And if you're not familiar with what I mean is that when you jump into a meeting, you have a branded experience for your organization. You may have seen, jumping onto this particular meeting, since it was my account here from Microsoft, we have our 50th anniversary celebrations happening right now, and they gave all of us who have premium license this ability to have this branded experience. And so you may have saw that as we were going through. So that is, the background image, the colors, the logo, all of that stuff can be customized through Teams Admin Center. And this is an example of a pre-join experience. This is what you see during in the meeting lobby once you're sitting in there. Coloring, all that. You'll see that on the mobile app. On top of that, when you're in there, you'll see that coloring for it. So in this case, it's a blue, but if it was purple, you would see that be a purple on the background, and highlights, everything would be in then purple color. So it just gives you an example of what you can do from a branding. And again, in this scenario, the organizer would have to have the Teams Premium license. They would be able to, then they get that branded experience. And then everybody that attends it will not need the premium license to access it at that point. All right. That's, Nick, what we want to do. Any last comments? Getting close to the end here.
Yeah, I have 3 minutes, and I'll do my Nick's complaints on things that people do that annoy me, and how to fix them.
Okay, good. You took
probably a nicer way to say this, but yeah. No, just
that
kinda,
might
just
take
kinda,
20 minutes. What are you talking about?
You're right. Yeah. Okay. No, just kind of thinking about just kind of closing with sort of presenter best practices, and just kind of how we think of things. The first is, we kind of talked about this concept of like just having some type of internal community for your event team. So this is just a screenshot of ours. You can kind of see, like, earlier this month, people are asking questions about how to download stuff from a town hall. Brian Nice is one of our super smart Teams engineers. He's kind of in there, answering it for people and just kind of helping them go through. So I find just kind of having that sort of parallel structure, set up alongside of all my training and support just kind of makes my job a lot easier. This is my one tip to wrangle executives. So what tends to happen, you have a town hall, right? Company meeting. It's going to start at 10 a.m. What time does your CFO join? 10 a.m., right? She's really busy. But we need her to join at like 15 till to do like a tech check and come off mute and that kind of stuff. So I will schedule a meeting, right? Whatever it is I'm doing, webinar, whatever. And then I will go into Microsoft Outlook and make an Outlook appointment. So not a Teams meeting, just a regular old school Outlook meeting from 2014. And then I will copy and paste the join link into that meeting, schedule it for 15 minutes earlier, and give it a name like Tech Check or Pre-Flight or something like that. I'm just kind of saying, hey, this is you, presenter, you got to join then. Now, these are the exact same meetings, but I find this just a really, like, this is just a really clear way to do it. This is me getting in the conference room a minute before we start, sort of a thing that's just kind of clear. They're also very unlikely to forward that additional meeting to other people, which I don't really want them to do. So I find just for like kind of getting my speakers ready, it just kind of helps. A couple other tools I like to just remind my speakers exist. In PowerPoint, there's a feature Speaker Coach, which is really nice, that kind of walks you through and listens to things like your cadence and how fast you talk and how often you say and stuff like that. Just kind of gives you good feedback. There's also a built-in accessibility checker that you can use. It goes through PowerPoint, pops up a little, has like its own ribbon that appears. So if you go to File, Info, Accessibility Checker, or just do a search in the ribbon on accessibility. And it does things like it looks for pictures that don't have alternate text in the background, or, that kind of yellow text on a white background, things like that are kind of hard to read. So I find, both of those are just, people kind of forget that they exist, and I just kind of like to remind them that they're out there. And then the last one, I always like to have just kind of like a housekeeping slide. Michelle, mention like have music or things like this. Here's the Nick tip if you're like me and you're old and you have a bad brain. I like to put in a little bumper slide that says, hey, just a reminder, we're going to record. Hope that's okay. Please leave if you don't. It's actually a reminder to me to hit start recording, right? And the reason is, if you set recording to start automatically in a meeting, and you're not doing like a webinar or town hall where you actually got to click the button, you're just doing a large structured meeting. If you set it to start automatically and like someone joins early, it starts the recording and then it stops when they end, and it does that every time someone joins. So if you ever go back to like one of your meetings, you look at that recap tab and there's like 6 tabs at the top, and there's like a bunch of recordings of about 5 seconds each. That's what happened, is Teams was like automatically recording because you had gone into options and turned on record automatically. Right? So I don't want to do that because that's really annoying. But I find if I don't do that, I forget to hit the start recording button. So I like to put in a little button right here just to remind myself, hey, here's the policy. Oh, yeah, let me go ahead and hit that really quick. So I like to kind of put these little guardrails, inside as we go, and are able to do it. So, Chris, do we get rid of Speaker Coach in GCC? I didn't realize we pulled that.
Well, I think in general, Speaker Coach from PowerPoint is, but there is a Teams meetings Speaker Coach. It's not the same. Okay. I completely agree. It's in preview. I threw the link in there.
I was trying to make it 90 minutes without saying Copilot, and we almost did. But there is a Microsoft 365 Copilot enabled coach that's coming. That's actually much, much better. But yeah, we're kind of in the middle of that coming out. So yeah. Oh, sure, Michelle, we almost did it. So I don't know if that was a feast of information, or we just kind of sprinted past the buffet to see what there was to eat. But takeaways. Again, I'll grab this link here that are on the slide. We'll drop them in, and we'll get these published for follow-up from the workshop today as well. If you want to go through the slides, poke through those. Each of these, 3 kind of options has sort of pre-configured settings inside of it. Use a community to kind of minimize the amount of peer support that you have to do as you go through. The technical documentation is down there at the bottom. And if you got, lots of people coming in, big event, practice, do a dry run. People always kind of
Absolutely. That's the important thing. Make sure you get them dry run. Make sure you get some time for them to play with the features and they feel comfortable with it. And then have them come back to the group and talk about what their experience was and have everybody learn from each other. That's the best way for those people to really understand how to make it work. So excellent. Well, thank you, everybody. And I think, Michelle, ready to turn it back over to you.